Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP, and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville, a Roundabout edition. We take a moment to sit with the news of the week, digest the headlines, consider the implications. Our panel here represents views that span left, right, and center. Today, attorney John Spragens, former reporter and political operative who also previously handled communications for Congressman Jim Cooper. Toby Compton, who worked for Nashville Mayor Karl Dean and in the administrations of Governors Bill Haslam and Bill Lee. And Sarah Grace Taylor, reporter with the Nashville Banner. Welcome to This is Nashville.
Thanks, Blake.
All right, so we're also taking your calls throughout the hour, as we do each week. And, you know, even if we've moved on to a new topic, we'll try to pick up your comments. So share it with us. This is your time to weigh in. What stories have you stewing? Any headlines making you rethink old positions? What little news nugget is maybe bringing you some joy? Share it with us. We need it. Join us on air at 615-760-2000. We're also streaming video from the studio today. If you're watching, you can leave your comment right there on the live stream, which is an easy way to do it. If you're getting a little shy about being on air, just drop it in the comments there at youtube.com/at WPLN, where you can also watch us right here in the studio. All right, so let me tee up a trio of topics right here. Starting next month, 500 soldiers from Fort Campbell will deploy to the southern border. The 101st Airborne Division is taking on a leadership role in the operation, overseeing units of all military divisions at various points along the U.S.-Mexico border. And according to a release sent out this morning, the U.S. Northern Command is sending the troops to, quote, protect the territorial integrity of the country. In early May 2025, there were around 500 traffic stops, roughly 200 arrests made by ICE in the Nashville area. These federal immigration raids carried out by federal agents and the Tennessee Highway Patrol triggered widespread fear in Nashville's immigrant communities, particularly in South Nashville. So much so that parents chose to keep their children home rather than sending them to school at times. And the Nashville Banner has a story this week that gives us an indication of how many families have kept kids home rather than risk sending them to school. And after 2 years of working on an expired contract, Meharry Medical College and Nashville General Hospital have signed a new agreement guiding how their partnership will work through 2027 anyway. The contract also opens the door to relocate Nashville General Hospital. If you'd like to weigh in, join us with a call. It's 615-760-2000. You can bring us your comment or question. Also comment on the live video stream, youtube.com/at WPLN. All right, so let's go to the 101st Airborne being sent to the border. Is it significant to send active duty Army to patrol the border, Toby, or is this something that we see from time to time?
Well, we've clearly seen it in recent years and recent times. I think that the 101st Airborne is a pivotal part of Middle Tennessee. We've seen them in action throughout the world, and they're going to play a pivotal part down in the border.
Yeah. John, I mean, isn't this something that, I mean, I'm even thinking, even Democratic governors, if I recall, Governor Bredesen sent troops, although it was National Guard troops, down to the border. Isn't this the kind of thing National Guard would typically handle?
Yeah. And I mean, relative to some other deployments that we're seeing lately, and I'm thinking about Washington, D.C., and, you know, the threat of deployments into cities like Nashville and Memphis, it certainly makes more sense to be deploying troops down to the border. Do I think that that's their highest and best use? I'm not certain that it is. You know, this is an administration that painted the fence black because they thought it would be too hot for people to climb over, neglecting to think about what happens at night when it's not, you know, sunny. So
you're saying on the border as a way to keep people from.
That's right.
I don't know of this the black paint scandal.
Well, Kristi Noem was very vocal about that, but in general, relative to the other types of deployments that we're seeing right now, this is legitimate.
Yeah, Sarah Grace, is there any indication that it's a sign that if this is something that maybe the National Guard would be doing at other times, that there's maybe an indication governors are unwilling to send more Guard troops to do other things that the president wants them to do?
It's hard to say, and I think that definitely isn't true in Tennessee, where we've sent some of our Guard to help with the operation that John mentioned in D.C. I think it could be that the states that are willing to give up Guard for those kinds of border and immigration-related tasks have kind of spent their capital on that. They have guard elsewhere helping Trump right now, and that might be why.
Yeah. While we're on this topic, obviously Congressman Andy Ogles has talked a bit about bringing the National Guard to Tennessee with some resistance, I think, from Governor Bill Lee. Kathleen brings us a comment and sort of wants to hear what this panel thinks about Andy Ogles suggesting the National Guard be brought to Nashville to help. Toby, is that something that seems realistic?
I don't think so. I don't think that that's really necessary. I don't think that's going to be a very popular thing. I think the governor has expressed, certainly in the Memphis area, an opposition to using the Guard in that way.
Yeah. John, what do you make of having so many military personnel being called into domestic duty? I mean, there's a lot of camouflage in the streets in America right now.
Well, we just saw Judge Charles Breyer from the Northern District of California, who's a longtime senior federal judge, hold that it violates the Posse Comitatus Act, which I try not to speak Latin on the radio.
I was going to say, you're going to have to bring us up to speed.
Don't ask me to
Professor
define
Spragens.
it. Yeah, but in general, it is no laughing matter to deploy the military into people's lives on the streets of American cities. And I think the courts are recognizing that. There is an effort to push back on it by states. And for Andy Ogles, who himself is facing a ton of scandals. I mean, this guy, it's very well documented through a lot of work by News Channel 5 and other outlets in Middle Tennessee. There's a lot of issues about the way he's conducted his campaigns. There was an FBI investigation that seems to be paused right now because of the new administration to try to scapegoat Nashville, which he represents, or at least a piece of, because the Republicans carved up the 5th District, which used to be all of Nashville. It seems to me that he's trying to turn the attention somewhere else.
Yeah. If you're just tuning in, this is a roundabout episode of This is Nashville. I'm your host, Blake Farmer. If you want to get in on the conversation, the phone number is 615-760-2000. We'll get to some of your calls here in just a moment. In fact, we've got one call from Chris in Nashville. Chris, you're on This is Nashville.
Oh, thanks for having me. So with Representative Ogles, he says these crazy things like Trump should have a third term, et cetera. I think we need to bring back the idea of Kennings. And every time that we mention him, we should say that, an FBI investigation into him was dropped. We can look at the Phil Williams investigation into him and his money and the schemes that he runs. So I think we need to couch what he says with what he's done. So
yeah.
I'll hang up to listen, but bring back Kennings.
Bring back Kennings. Is this a reference to something that you have to say? If you say someone's name, you also say something else, or anyone?
You promise not to put me on the spot. I don't know the answer to the Kennings question.
Chris, we're going to have to do some Googling, but behind the glass, maybe it'll help us out, and we'll figure out Kennings. But Sarah Grace, did I read correctly that Andy Ogles is having a town hall this weekend?
Yeah, he has one scheduled, which is kind of uncharacteristic.
I found it surprising. Yeah.
Yeah. He's having one to address the big, beautiful bill, as it was called. I don't think it's just him, but he is a speaker in person in Spring Hill this weekend. So it'd be interesting to hear what his constituents say about it. Obviously, in opposition to him, but also in the D7 race. Even Republicans who have qualms about that bill, that's become a big part of the conversation with constituents.
Help me understand that. So Andy Ogles, that's the 5th district, I hope you can understand that all of our geography in the Nashville area, people are trying to figure out, wait, which district am I in? But 7th congressional district, that's Mark Green, where he's stepped down, and there's a special election. You're saying the big beautiful bill is actually kind of a point of contention in that race right now?
Well, I'd say it's like one of the primary topics on people's minds. Yeah. In D7 specifically, they're going to lose a rural hospital because of it. There's a lot of economic concern in that district, and there are people who rely on Social Security, which is getting cut, Medicaid. I think generally that bill is a hot button issue in both of those districts and will be kind of at the center of Ogles' reelection race next year. So what he says on this matter, which his constituents don't love ubiquitously at all, Saturday will be really interesting.
Yeah. All right. Well, producer Mary Mancini has us taken care of here. A kenning is a concise metaphorical representation that uses two words to describe a person, place, or thing through associations. So, Chris, thank you for that. If you want to jump in like Chris on the conversation on air, the number is 615-760-2000. Let's move to the ICE raids from earlier in the year and metro schools. So, it's tough. I mean, even in the story that was in the Nashville Banner, I mean, there's, a lot there, and yet it's not like anyone's putting together a bunch of numbers and saying this is how many families are, keeping their kids home. But it seems pretty clear that there is some of that going on. Toby, you've got social workers in metro schools that are apparently offering to drive students from time to time because their parents are too afraid to get out. What does that tell you about the difficult position that educators are in at this moment?
Well, I think teachers and principals are in a really tough spot with this. And any of the listeners out there should read the Nashville Banner story that Lillian wrote. It's excellent. It's long. It's very thoughtful. It covers a lot. It's my understanding in metro schools that they do not keep immigration status amongst the students and families. And so it's probably a very big challenge. The story goes into walking groups. Parents are concerned about getting on the roads and driving and being arrested. They're afraid, in some cases, for their kid to go to school, thinking that ICE or others may come in and take the children. It's a very complicated position that we're putting our teachers and principals in, and they've already got a very tough job.
Right. Well, John, is there a risk to school districts, and I'm thinking beyond metro schools, that if they back off truancy laws that require these students to be in school, that they could also get themselves in trouble on the other end with the state somehow?
Certainly nothing is beyond the Trump administration and the Republican, state governance as well. I would hope that everybody can agree, this is a situation in which we're talking about children who are just trying to get educated. And to put all of this on our schools, to put this on teachers, guidance counselors, principals, to have to know what to do if ICE comes and knocks on the door at your school, if they show a warrant or if they show some other document. I mean, it's hard enough to educate kids, especially kids who are having to overcome a lot of obstacles, and to add more obstacles, including the reasonable fear that they might get pulled over and their parents might get arrested and they'll never see them again. That's outrageous. And I think that that's something everybody can agree on.
Sarah Grace, you've covered the state legislature's efforts to make it difficult for the children of undocumented immigrants to go to school. I mean, bills that, wanted to charge them tuition and that kind of thing. Would those lawmakers have any concerns about what we're talking about here, this kind of collateral damage from the ICE raids?
That's hard to say whether they have concerns about it. That was a big part of the debate around the bill that you're talking about, which is on, I shouldn't say on ice, but is on hold till next year, but will come back up again, that would say that students who are undocumented cannot attend schools for free, but school districts can charge tuition. There was a lot of debate around that. There were already chilling effects around that discussion before the ICE raid happened, where there were some students who were hesitant to go to school during this conversation. And a lot of the root of that bill, according to sponsors William Lamberth and Bo Watson, was the idea that they don't track that. They don't track status of students right now at the state level. So certainly that tracking would happen. And then even if you can go to school, are you going to show up if you know that you're in a registry of undocumented students, given the current political climate?
Yeah.
And if you look at Lillian's story, it goes back and shows truancy and stuff beginning back in like the fall around the election. So even again, before the ICE raid, this is already kind of happening in Nashville.
Yeah. Well, if you'd like to chime in on that story, feel free to do that, and we can come back to it. The number is 615-760-2000, but we're going to move on, squeeze in one more story before we go to our first break. So, to Meharry and Nashville General Hospital. Nashville General is the city's community hospital. It's run by the Hospital Authority Board, whose trustees are appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the Metro Council. Toby, you worked in the Karl Dean administration when he was mayor. What was the relationship between the hospital, Meharry, and the mayor's office at that time?
Well, it was contentious because the hospital had a number of financial issues,
right? Where they were asking for money at the end of the year to help tie them over,
to always come back, and it became a source of contention amongst the council members who had to approve that funding. It's really important for Meharry and General Hospital to be a vibrant and a place in the community because it plays a really special role. It's really important in North Nashville. That community is very proud of that facility. And so we need those entities to get along and work well together.
Yeah, well, I was almost surprised that yesterday, Meharry President James Hildreth was like pretty candid about there being a sour relationship over in the past. We had Dr. Webb, who was the CEO and left earlier this year of General Hospital, had been there for 10 years or so. But why is that relationship so complex, Toby?
Well, it's been complex for years. And
right.
Mayors before Karl Dean, going back to Bredesen and beyond, have had to struggle with this. How do you fund the hospital properly? What is its place in the community? And, in the story that was out there, and I thought it was a good idea, why is someone from Meharry not on the hospital authority board?
It's amazing that's not.
I thought, well, common sense, right? It just kind of makes sense, because if we want that relationship to work, they should have a voice in that.
Yeah, John, there's been talk for years about moving the hospital off of the Meharry campus, and I was always unclear whether that was desired by Meharry or not. But is there a reason that might benefit both the city and the school?
Well, Dr. Webb, I think, wanted to move the hospital over here onto Mainstream Drive, actually.
Yeah.
I believe there's a feeling that the current facility is out of date, has sort of outlived its usefulness. I think that Meharry believes that they can put clinical programs, research trial programs, community programs in that building. And Nashville General certainly is facing, what's going to be an increasing crisis of safety net healthcare, because the big, beautiful bill that Sarah was talking about earlier really has made some severe cuts to Medicaid funding and what we call in Tennessee TennCare funding. So we're going to see a huge demand for indigent health care, and that probably is going to include a conversation about how to relocate in an area that everyone is comfortable with, but that can serve the full city, or maybe multiple areas. And I think the mayor has said, now that they've signed this partnership agreement finally, he's ready to have that conversation. So yeah. I think we'll see that coming.
Well, I remember as they were talking about this a couple of years ago, they were saying if there was no other factor to be considered, you probably wouldn't place it where it is now, because it's not as accessible to. I think the zip code that needed it most was sort of in like an Antioch area, and that most of their patients were not right there around the hospital anymore. Can one imagine something like that, where this hospital actually moves far away from Meharry?
I would be shocked to see Nashville General not maintain a presence in North Nashville because of the historic roots of that hospital and Meharry and the partnership that started between them. Nashville had a segregated health system for a long time, and Nashville General has really been integral to training some of the finest, black doctors in the United States of America. And so I believe that there will always be a connection to North Nashville, but there is probably going to need to be a connection to other parts of our community as well.
Yeah. Well, if you want to chime in on the story, feel free to do that, and we'll come back to it. But we need to take our first break. When we come back, we'll revisit the case of former House Speaker Glenn Cassida, whose sentencing is upon us, and we'll look at the 19th Amendment and talk about household voting. It's a thing. Stay with us. This is Nashville.
Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. It's our weekly Roundabout episode. We've got John Spragens, Toby Compton, and Sarah Grace Taylor on our panel today to help us consider all sides of the stories that have us talking this week. And we also want to hear from you. The phone number is 615-760-2000. Just put it on speed dial so you can chime in every week if you choose. Or you can also comment on the video stream at youtube.com/@WPLN, and we will work those comments into the conversation. So I'll throw a few more items into the hopper. In 2019, then Speaker of the House Glenn Cassida and his former Chief of Staff, Cade Cothran, created a camouflaged company secretly run by Cothran under the fake name of Matthew Phoenix. State lawmakers contracted with the company Phoenix Solutions to send out constituent mailers through a taxpayer-funded state program. Cassida and former state representative Robin Smith then urged lawmakers to do business with the company. Smith, in this case, pleaded guilty and then testified against Cassida and Cothran. So that brings us more to this year. Back in May, Cassida and Cothran were convicted on federal charges of political corruption, including fraud, bribery, theft, conspiracy, and money laundering. Cassida was convicted on 17 counts, Cothran on 19 counts, and each conviction can come with a $250,000 fine and a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison. Sentencing is coming up next week, and the men are seeking a joint sentencing hearing so they can plead for a lighter sentence. Their lawyers are expected to object to the rules used to calculate their sentences. And I'm just curious, Sarah Grace, how closely do you sense state lawmakers at the Capitol right now are watching this case?
Oh, I can't imagine anything they're watching more closely. Even back at the end of the legislative session, they were trying to wrap up quickly before the trial started because a lot of them had to testify, and obviously a lot of them had skin in that game. So I imagine
And not being asked about it? I mean, is that part of it? Like kind of wanting to not have to say anything that puts their former colleagues in a negative light?
You know, I think that's definitely part of it, but they were more candid than you might have expected. Especially Randy McNally was pretty open about denouncing Cassida and that behavior.
Well, this is the guy who wore the wire during the
Right.
Tennessee Waltz, famous, and likes talking about it.
Sure does.
Yeah.
So I think there was definitely some of that where they didn't want to get asked in press conferences every week about it during the trial. But also, I mean, there were several of them that had to testify, so they had actual schedule conflicts.
Wow. Well, John, is there, you're the attorney on the panel up here. Is there any way that Cassida or Cothran avoid prison time here?
Probably not, although the new playbook for people who are convicted of crimes in federal court or facing prosecution is they start to talk to the Trump administration. So you already saw John Rich, local country star, put a plea in publicly on Cade's behalf. So
I had not seen this, no.
that happened. And really that is a back channel. I've heard anecdotally in any number of circumstances that people just try to find their way to President Trump's ear in order to get, clemency or a pardon. So I think probably prison time is likely for these gentlemen. The U.S. Attorney's Office got a conviction. Now, there is a motion for mistrial that's pending, so there's a chance that the judge would set aside the trial and make them do it again. But I think until the president intervenes, which he's shown many times he's willing to do for people, there is a trial likely. And I would be remiss not to note that Party Foul closed this week, its Midtown location, Gulch location, and that played a leading role in the scandal that we're describing.
I had forgotten, and I'll just tell listeners you'll have to go back and sift through all the coverage to be reminded why Party Foul plays a role in this case. Toby, it's really not a laughing matter. I think in this case turned serious pretty quickly. Do you see it potentially changing the way business is done at the state capitol going forward?
Well,
is it just an outlier?
It's not an outlier, unfortunately, because we've seen scandals happen now for generations, right? You go back to Blanton. I mean, these things happen, and what's amazing about this story, I think, and you hit it on the head. This started in 2019. That's 6 years ago. This is a long story, and I think Sarah Grace hit it on the head. I think a lot of the lawmakers were nervous about this back earlier this year. And kind of where it would go. But these things are going to happen periodically because a lot of these guys come into town and they think they become invisible when they're in town and they start doing things. And, the Democrats have done it. The Republicans have done it. We're seeing it happen again right now. What's interesting about this case, too, and I don't understand this, and John may know a little bit better, but they're going to appear together. But Cassida's defense team, what I've read is they're going to object to that. They want to do this particular sentencing, how the formula is set for sentencing. They want to do it independently, away from each other. I don't understand why that is, but I find that to be interesting that they wouldn't do it together because these two gentlemen were very, very close for a very long time. Right.
Yeah. No, they were right there together. How much would you say the Republicans being in a supermajority is part of this, that you sort of get comfortable in power and that's when you have folks doing stuff that is not just questionable, but illegal.
I'm a person who believes that super majorities are always bad, period. Because our system works best when you have a vibrant Democratic Party and a vibrant Republican Party, and you're fighting it out in the court of ideas, right? Where people come and there's light, right? A little bit of light is a really good disinfectant, right? And that requires the other side having the ability to question the other side.
Notably, the state and the supermajority have passed bills that have made it easier to skirt these same lines, even since the Matthew Phoenix situation. And there's been anything but, I would say, an increase in accountability. And that goes as evidence of what you can get away with the supermajority. There's not really a lot of accountability within the legislature from this.
One thing I didn't know until this scandal is that the legislature has official funds that they can use to send mail pieces out to people. And I can understand why that might be the case. But they then, you see how this can develop where you steer that money to a friend or a donor. And in this case, it went a step further, which is to somebody who had apparently concealed their identity. But they actually did deliver the mail pieces, is my understanding about what happened in this scandal.
And I wrote a story earlier this summer about another example that was happening at the same time with the Hill brothers. And when you speak to all the lawmakers who they did this same kind of mail situation with, they're like, yeah, that was normal. That's just what we were doing for the whole 2010s. So it's very much institutional and not just related to the Matthew Phoenix.
And the Hill brothers, that both of the Hills, this is Timothy and Matthew Hill, who are both state lawmakers. And remind us of the high points of that they essentially had their own company that they printed these materials for other legislators?
So Timothy Hill, who's still in the legislature or is in the legislature again, and his brother Matthew, who used to be, were very similarly drumming up business from their peers when they were lawmakers to send out mailers to do other consulting work. And they were getting money from campaigns to do that.
Right. Well, just another indication of how the money that is in fundraising for their campaigns can go to kind of become a job for some. Toby.
Well, and I'll add, these funds have been there for decades.
Yeah.
And I remember in some of the political races in the mid to late 90s, Republicans using these funds against Democrats in some of these races. So this stuff has been around, the abuse of these funds has been around for a while now, and it probably should be reined in.
Yeah. If you're just tuning in, this is Nashville. It's a Roundabout episode. We're taking your calls this hour, 615-760-2000. Let's go ahead and go to the phones. Laura from Franklin, you're on This is Nashville.
Hi. I have a comment about the National Guard and immigration and ICE raids. And I think that it's really sad that we had to get to the point where these things had to happen to have any kind of effect, because it just seems to me that in the last couple of decades, no one has respected our laws. No one is afraid of our law enforcement. No one has believed that once they made it over the border that they would ever be forced to leave. And now it seems like finally people are becoming afraid of our law enforcement and afraid that if they're found that they're going to be forced to leave. And why did we have to get to this point?
Yeah, Laura, you make a good point. John Spragens, I wonder how you might respond to Laura, because it's true. The people there was a time that they were not afraid of the thing they're afraid of now.
No doubt about it. This has been a longstanding problem, dating back to the Reagan administration at least, where, frankly, large businesses too have relied on immigrant labor and sort of looked the other way on immigration status. And so in my view, it's a bipartisan problem. It is a systemic problem, and it's a problem involving big business. Frankly, during the Obama administration, they were deporting more people than even the Trump administration has, at least at times so far. So while I don't disagree that we need to figure out how to solve this problem, militarizing it and using the resources of our national security apparatus. Now we're out there shooting at boats off the coast of Venezuela with no probable cause. And it's just because somebody said there's some drugs on that boat. We've got to solve these problems, but I don't think that weaponizing our national security apparatus. It needs to be protecting us is the way to do it.
Yeah. Toby, is there a risk that some of this is going to come back to bite folks who are, kind of cheering on use of the military in this way?
Perhaps. Excuse me. Perhaps. What I think is interesting is, as John pointed out, this has been a conversation going on since the Reagan administration. Both sides have used it in different ways. And the fact of the matter is Congress has failed us as Americans in not addressing immigration reform. And they should be held accountable. That's Republicans and Democrats both. They need to make some decisions. That's what we send them to Washington, D.C. for. They should come up with the correct policies, and then they should be implemented in a thoughtful way.
Lauren Franklin, really appreciate the call. If you want to join her on air, 615-760-2000. Let's turn to a story that Sarah Grace is going to have to help us understand here. And that is the Communion of Reformed Evangelical Churches has pushed into Tennessee. They're promoting the idea of household voting, as in like one vote per household. And while, yes, that sounds like a fringe idea, this movement includes a prominent Republican who may enter the race for governor in Tennessee, and that is Pete Hegseth, the current Secretary of Defense. So, Sarah Grace, we're sort of talking about a bit of reporting that you put out in the last week or so. First, do we know how Pete Hegseth feels about voting rights for women?
Hegseth wouldn't answer that, or his spokespeople wouldn't answer that when I called him for the story. They did say in a press conference right after he shared a video by the leader of the CREC church where the different leaders were saying that they would support repealing the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote to this end. So Hegseth shared that, and that was kind of where the questions around his stance came from. And when he was asked about it in a press conference, a spokesperson said it's a stupid question. Of course, he supports women's right to vote. Hegseth has not addressed this publicly except for to delete the tweet where he reshared it. So it's hard to guess what his personal beliefs are, but I spoke to his pastor at a church in Goodlettsville, a CREC church, and I spoke also to a podcast host who's had Hegseth on repeatedly and is a member of that same church here in Nashville. And they both support the idea of household voting but don't think it's imminent. The podcast host more so has been very vocal around elections repeatedly that women shouldn't be voting and they should be voting alongside their husbands at the polls.
I mean, it just seems like the kind of thing that, hard to just imagine that any state legislature would take that kind of thing up. Like, what is the point? What are they trying to get to?
It's hard to say. I think some of the political relevance of it is that the CREC church has just opened its first D.C. church. So now Hegseth is splitting his time between that one and Goodlettsville. And Hegseth, obviously being in the cabinet and being a member of this once fringe church, is kind of giving it credence. So, when you speak to the pastor, he's like, oh, we'd love that, but that's so far out, there's no way. But also you've seen in the last 5 or 10 years, like a real increase in the number of these churches. There's 7 in Tennessee now, 3 of them in the Nashville area. So it is growing. And the idea of whether it could get to the point that a legislature would take it up is hard to imagine, yet closer than it feels like it would have been 5 years ago.
Toby, I wonder if you could talk about maybe like the political implications. I mean, we don't know. I'm not sure what Pete Hegseth has said about whether he would run for governor and why people seem to think he might run for governor in Tennessee. But it makes me wonder if this is some kind of preemptive smear attempt that people are sort of trying to find fringe ideas of this church that he's a part of,
Well, I think fringe ideas are around us all the time right now. That's kind of the status quo that we see. I think this notion, great story. I had no idea about this denomination, crazy idea. But Tennessee has a rich history in the women's right to vote. Right, there's a great monument and art at Centennial Park that remembers that we were the state that ratified the 19th Amendment. I just don't see any way that this comes about. And could it be something that Mr. Hegseth that he uses in some way? I sort of doubt it. I don't think this is a wildly popular idea among either political party.
That's what I wondered, if people were pointing to it because they thought that it was perhaps a liability for him, and if he were to get in the race and maybe preemptively point it out instead. I don't know. You've been in that kind of political advisor seat from time to time, John. I mean, is this the kind of thing that someone who did not want to have to run against somebody who might have the backing of Donald Trump would want to point out?
Pete Hegseth, Middle Tennessee resident Pete Hegseth, tweeted this church's video himself or posted it on social media. So nobody's doing this to him. He is a subscriber of these beliefs, and it is part of a sustained project by this Christian nationalist movement to take over, and they've successfully taken over the Republican Party on a national level at this point, and they're taking away rights from women. When we talk about household voting, what a nice euphemism that is. But what we really mean is the man is the head of the household, and he's going to cast the vote on behalf of the family. Now, Pete Hegseth has had a few different families, sometimes at the same time. And so I just find this the height of hypocrisy for a person like this to be pushing some notion of household voting. But don't say it can't happen here because, number one, we've banned abortion. Contraception is on the menu, folks. And I'm the father of 2 daughters, and that's very important to realize.
It's worth noting, too, that the local church leaders who I spoke to for the story very openly say, we don't think that's going to happen soon. But if we distract them with this outrageous idea of taking away women's right to vote, maybe we can get other stuff done. Like, it's not secretly the far end of their overall taking away rights from people, specifically women, agenda.
Well, if you want to chime in on this, we're happy to come back to it. But at the moment, we need to take our last break. When we come back, we'll talk about a new police precinct in Antioch, testing the limits of what you can put on a custom license plate in Tennessee, and maybe a few headlines you've missed this week. Stay with us. This is Nashville.
Funding for This is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. It is our Roundabout episode. Our panel here around this table includes Sarah Grace Taylor, the Nashville Banner, attorney John Spragens, and Toby Compton, most recently in the administration of Bill Lee. We're going to crack into a few more stories, but we're happy to chat about whatever you want to bring back up, and the number to do that on the air is 615-760-2000. You can also just drop a comment on the YouTube stream if you're watching video from the studio here, and that's at youtube.com/@WPLN. Every time I look at one of these cameras, Toby gets very uncomfortable over here. We're radio on the video is what's happening today. All right, but let's jump into this. A new police precinct opens in Antioch in a couple of weeks. It's nearly 10 years in the making. It will be one of the largest precincts in Davidson County. According to Metro Police data, the 37013 zip code, which is in the Antioch area, is also a jurisdiction that has seen more reported criminal offenses and vehicle crashes than any other zip code in the county. But there is some concern that a big investment in policing may not be the only answer that's needed. And a lot of folks, this came from, I believe, some of Stephen Hale's reporting in the Banner. We're, just talking about, listen, this is a very diverse community that is not interested in some kind of profiling occurring. I wonder, Sarah Grace, if residents of Antioch have any reason to be concerned with this bigger police presence coming.
Well, I think most people know this, but Antioch is a very large immigrant community. It's a very diverse population, unlike most of the other ones in Nashville. It's one of the more diverse neighborhoods. So naturally, there's the kind of residual concern that people of color have around police in any city in the U.S. But also to harken back to something we talked about earlier, the recent ICE stuff, though Metro Police did not participate in that, is a big concern to that community as well. And I think generally there's just a heightened concern about interacting with any law enforcement on that side of town. Mm-hmm. So the idea of this precinct, which might be a good thing if you look at the statistics, it makes logical sense that if you were going to divide police work, there would be an increase down on that side of town. Comes with cultural challenges of how do you do that in a sensitive and responsive way to a community like that.
Well, one of the chief complaints prior to this has been about slow response times. When neighbors are calling about, gunshots or drag racing has been a very big issue in this part of town. Toby, do we really think that the community has these mixed feelings about police, or is it maybe just reflective of the current political moment to bring up such things?
There's probably some timing to it. I think Sarah Grace raised that very well. But the Southeast precinct was the largest precinct in Davidson County, and so it was the square miles in that was huge. And I was around in the mayor's office when they were talking about this back then, and so it has been years in the making. I think having a precinct closer to the Antioch nexus there will improve response times. And I'll say that in my dealings with the department, I know that when they think through where they're going to put precincts, it's a very long and a very thoughtful and a data-driven process. And so, I think as many people who don't want or are concerned about this, there are an equal number of people who do want this.
We'd love to hear from you right now. Is this your neighborhood we're talking about here? Why don't you chime in on air, 615-760-2000. John, is there more to be said about policing in this part of town that is, like Sarah Grace said, probably one of the most diverse states in the state?
Sure. I mean, as Toby correctly said and probably knows, public safety always polls really well. If you're in the mayor's office, you're thinking people want the police when they need the police. And so it's important to make sure that our citizens have access to the police at all times. The flip side of that is there over-policing, or are we sending police to deal with mental health issues or other situations where maybe another type of intervention would be better? So in my view, with this very diverse part of town wanting and deserving good public safety against the backdrop of these ICE raids, where ICE is coming in and the THP is using state highways to try to stop people and basically put them in federal custody, Metro Police has an opportunity here to say, we are a partner, we are on your side, we want to keep you safe, and we don't have any interest in handing you over to the federal government or something like that. So hopefully they can walk that line.
Happy to jump back into this topic if any calls come in, 615-760-2000. But we're going to move on for just a moment here. So a Tennessee woman is asking the Supreme Court to rule that the vanity license plate she used for 11 years reflects her personal views and not those of the government. So earlier this year, the Tennessee Supreme Court ruled that the license plate in question was government and not private speech, and therefore not protected by the First Amendment. So that's what we're going to talk about here. The message in question is, I'm going to read it on air. I don't think there's any harm in it. It's 69 PWNDU. Toby, do you have any idea what that stands for?
Well, the lady involved here has suggested that 69 is part of her phone number, I believe. And the latter part, the letters indicate a video gamer acronym. I don't remember what it stands for.
I really didn't mean for you to have to tell us what it was. But some sort of online gamer phrase.
Gamer phrase. I looked it up online when I heard the story a while back, and you can go down a rabbit hole into that. I have no idea what it really means. I don't know if it's offensive or not.
Yeah. I think it means kind of like you owned somebody. Yeah. But the point, the question is about these vanity license plates, and John is the attorney on the table. Like, is this really just a question of should we really be allowing vanity plates if we're going to have to determine what is allowed and what's not?
Right. I mean, it's a tricky question. Is this government speech or is this personal expression? And frankly, the Supreme Court in recent years has been kind of all over the place about, what constitutes your own right to expression or your right to express your religious views. If I were going to send a test case up to the United States Supreme Court, this is probably not the license plate that I would use. I would have sent my John 3:16 license plate up there because that's more likely, in my view, for this current Supreme Court to be held as, well, you have the right to express that. Here, I'm not sure 69 pwned you is going to be the best test case if they take it.
Well, and I did not realize that there is a 5-member team that evaluates vanity license plates requests, and they even consult the Urban Dictionary, because of course you'd have to consult something like that to see if it's, what's being suggested is profanity or sexual content or talking about ethnic slurs or something, but it does seem like it could all be subjective. Sarah Grace, any reflections here?
I mean, she's trolling with the license plate, and
right.
Maybe her phone number contains 69, but that's not why it's there. So I think John makes a really good point. This is probably not the best case to use to make this argument. because it does just seem so flippant and trolling, and it's not really like your ideal passion case to argue this about. I don't know. It's just silly.
Well, we'll leave it at that. We'll go back to the phones. We're going to maybe revisit this issue of the big police precinct opening in Antioch. Dee Dee from Antioch, you're on the air. This is Nashville.
Hello. My name is Dee Dee, and I've been a resident of Antioch for about 20 years. And, we are absolutely tired of the lawlessness. It's just like Gotham City, honestly. And I think that an increased police presence will have a positive impact on the skyrocketing crime in the area. I've been driving down Murfreesboro Road at times where the intersections have been shut down by cars doing circles, drag racing. It's just, I think, we really need an additional presence. And I also hear that the headquarters in the area would also have a positive impact on the housing prices. So I welcome, the precinct or headquarters or whatever it is.
Yeah. And is your sense that, at least in your circles, that it's pretty universal embrace that more presence is better than less?
Absolutely, and it's really needed. And I live in a subdivision. I own a home there, and a lot of the residents, a lot of the other people in our small community, they also, we want safety in our city. And I'm not sure of, the racial components to it or anything, but just as a citizen, just trying to live there, wanting a safe place for my family, I'm certain that an additional police presence will, just help us be safer.
Yeah. Dee Dee, thank you for the call. Always helpful to talk to people who are, on the ground, living it out.
On the front line.
All right. Well, thank you for the call.
Okay.
If you want to chime in, I'm going to give the number just one more time because you only have a minute or so to get in. If you have a comment that you've been sitting on, 615-760-2000. We will quickly just go to maybe a story that has your attention that maybe more people should know about. Toby Compton, what you got for us?
Well, the recent purchase of PSC Metals has been a big story, and it's going to have a huge impact
on the East Bank.
On the East Bank. I've heard the rumors of Major League Baseball once again resurfacing in that space, and that would be a highly visible space with the interstate access and the new stadium going up over there. I think it's very much in the rumor and baseball enthusiast world. They want this. I think it's a long time away.
This is a guy who I believe was the executive director of the Sports Authority.
I built First Tennessee Park. And to that, I'll say this: the Sounds are a great product. They're a historic product for our city. Baseball goes back to right after the Civil War, when the troops played the game on the East Bank, and we have a great AAA facility that's still the most attended in the country. And I say, go Sounds.
All right, Sarah Grace, a story that's got your attention that maybe should have others.
I would just say the special election in District 7 for Mark Green's seat, which we talked about earlier. I feel like it's happened so quickly with him resigning in July, and the primary for this is October 7th. It's October 7th. And I just think people need to be paying attention to that. About half of Nashville, because of the way it's sliced, or about a quarter of Nashville is in District 7. I think there's a lot of people from that Clarksville to south end of Tennessee that need to be paying attention to that one.
Well, and is this just a matter that it's not going to be a race that's going to be a big television ad kind of a race? It's going to be smaller than that. Especially
the primary. So you have 4 Democrats and 11 qualified Republicans right now running, and none of them are huge names. So I think there's just a lot of, we'll see what turnout looks like and hope for the best in the primary, and that doesn't result in necessarily the most informed electorate.
Yeah. John, you going to leave us with anything that people should be paying attention to, a headline that they may have missed this week?
Well, we've already talked about Andy Ogles and his war on Nashville, and now he's drawn an opponent in Chaz Mulder, the mayor of Columbia, who's gotten into that race. So I think that'll shape up to be interesting. Other than that, I'm firmly against putting NASCAR in our neighborhoods, and I think that NASCAR is trying to get itself at the fairgrounds and sort of box the mayor in. And,
well, we a few weeks ago talked about an imminent announcement about NASCAR that I think still hasn't come. Toby, do you know why that would be?
According to the mayor's office, there is no deal. I think the pro race car folks are trying to, as John said, box the mayor in on this. And I know there's some state legislators who really want to see this, and so it becomes once again a city-state kind of issue.
Yeah. Well, when it comes, we will talk about it on the Roundabout. Thank you to Toby Compton, Sarah Grace Taylor, and John Spragens for joining us on the Roundabout. We do this on Thursdays, so join us again next week. This is Nashville is a production of Nashville Public Radio. Today's episode was produced by Mary Mancini. It was directed by Tasha A.F. Limley. Josh Deepin was answering the phones over there. Our board operator is Liv Lombardi. The masterminds behind our theme music there are LaRange and Namir Blade. You can listen back at thisisnashville.org or wherever you get good podcasts. You can also ask a smart speaker to play the latest episode. It's quite easy. Or you can watch the archived video at youtube.com/@WPLN. The conversation does not end here. You can comment and tell us what you want to hear on the show by leaving us a message at a different number, 615-751-2500. You can also find us on Blue Sky and Instagram, X at This Is Nashville. This is Nashville. I'm Blake Farmer. Go in peace.